So the last riveting that we're going to do is the spacer rivet. It's kind of the hardest one, but it's really not that difficult. You just got to follow the right steps. So what we're going to do here is I got an extra little piece here, this little horsey that somebody cut out at some point that was sitting in my bench. And I'm going to put this on this piece of metal, but it's going to be on a spacer, so it's going to stand up. So we've got two different sizes of silver tubing that we have provided. There's a bigger one and a smaller one. The bigger tubing is going to become the spacer, and the smaller tubing is going to become the pylon in this situation. So you can see that the smaller tubing fits perfectly inside, well, you can't see, the pylon here. Or, yeah, fits perfectly inside the larger tubing. So this will be the spacer, this will be the rivet. So my holes have to be the size of my rivet. So what I'm going to do is determine the size of this, the length of this tubing. I will have to take the spacer plus the thickness of the metal. I find the best way to do that is to go ahead and punch my holes, get it ready, set it all up, and then I can mark where I want to cut it. So let's go ahead and punch the holes for the spacer rivet, same as we've been doing before because we only got one punch size. So it's going to be 14 gauge again. We're going to put it right up here. Maybe this will work by the eyeball. Pop a hole through, pull it out, and then I'm going to go over here and mark where I want it on this piece here so I can punch my rivet on there. So I'll go in, and I'm using a scribe, but you can use a Sharpie or anything to mark that spot. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pop this hole through. And now I've got my two holes popped in there. I want to think about how am I going to get the right size rivet. So what I'll do is I'll feed everything through. So I'm going to go ahead and put, why am I confused here? This guy through here, so I got to go like that. So I'm going to put this through here. This is the rivet, the actual pylon through here. Back that up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. So I put the pylon through and just move that up a little bit like this. The pylon's just kind of in there. And then I'm going to take the spacer and put it on there. And then I'm going to take the part that I'm riveting on and I'm going to put it on there. And then I'm going to be able to look at this and see how long it has to be. So you can see now how this all comes together. This spacer and then the pylon in between. So now I'm going to go up here and I'm going to mark it so I can get the right length. Once again, the idea is that you want to have about 1.5 the width of your pylon sticking out on each side. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut this. I've got these nice little tube cutting pliers to make this a lot easier, which allows me to hold the tubing in there and then I can run my saw blade down the middle. It's really easy. And then go under here. A little burr life on there. Ooh. Almost broke it. Get that back lined up. I'll try that again. This is catching. A little burr life on there. We'll try it again. Sometimes, even with the fancy pliers, it's hard. There we go. Alright, so I got my rivet now. I've got my pylon. I've got my this guy here. So let's move over to the bench block because that's where we're going to work. So now I'm going to go ahead and put my rivet in, feed it through, feed my pylon through, feed my spacer through, and then put the other piece on. Now I'm going to check to make sure my length is good. It looks like I'm a little too long when I cut this one. So what I do when I'm a little on this left side over here, it's a little too long, just sticks out a little too far for me. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that piece down a little bit. But instead of cutting it, because that just makes things a little too hard, I'm going to put it up here and I'm just going to file until I get it short enough. It's just a little too long. So I don't want to take it out and cut again if I can just file off that excess. Oh, that's pretty good. I'm going to file the other side just to make sure it's clean. So that looks like that's ready. So now, just like before, we just start on one side and start rounding it out just enough that it won't fall out the other side when I flip it. Then I'll do the same thing over here. Start rounding it out just enough that it's not going to come out on this side if I flip it. And I'll come back to the other side, line this up, start working it around. Crookedy. Back over here. It's a little ugly. So sometimes your tube rivets, especially if you leave them long, they end up a little ugly. So you can go back and clean them up and get out your little needle files. Where is that at? And so I like to go in with a little round and just kind of clean that up so that looks round again. Same over here, because they get a little funky in the process. That needs riveted a little more. Anyway, no, this needs a little more hammering. And this one needs a little more hammering too. There you go. So now, my little kitty with his little horsey friend is all done. So that would be a completed riveting sample. You've got a pylon rivet, a tube rivet, and a spacer rivet.